Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Osceolas Reeling Them In Recruiting Report. It's not even Friday and I'm already having a hard time talking. So it's been a long, busy week. But my name is Pat Burnham and I'm joined by Osceola recruiting analyst Charles Fishbein and by Osceola recruiting writer and Nick. Sounded like Nick's kind of understated most of the time, but he really seems to be getting into this recruiting thing. He enjoyed 7-on-7 out in the
Embracing hot
Tallahassee sun yesterday. So we've got a lot to talk about with Fish and Nick. We're going to start with going back to last week's official visits, talk a little bit about elite camp from Sunday, some updates from Wednesday's big man and 7-on-7 camps on Wednesday. And then, of course, FSU is going to host up to probably no fewer than 6, possibly 7 guys on official visits this weekend, and then ramping up to quarterback camp, another camp on Sunday, which I think Fish is going to be here for, an individual skills camp. Then we get the quarterback and specialty camp on Monday, June, I believe that's the 17th. And then, of course, the big weekend. I'm actually going to be about 5 midweek visits next week, and we'll do a little bit of probably a preview of that on Monday. We don't want to get too many names in your head. And then you got the big visit weekend on June 21st with close to 20 kids in town. But let's go back to last weekend, guys. We had Max Buchanan in town, Ladarian Clarity, Zion Grady, Bryce Fitzgerald, Osman Cromon. I don't know if I'm saying his first name right ever. And I'm just going to start calling him OK. But he's better than OK as a football player. We know that. Chase Lofton and Ethan Pritchett and Max Redmond, Tony Williams. So it was a big weekend, guys. Fish, you and I talked a little bit last week, and I'll ask for both of your opinions on this. You and I kind of thought that we said there would be a commitment coming out of that group of 7 kids that were here, or 9 kids that were here last weekend. I thought I ranked it. I had Max Redmond, then Ladarian Clarity, then Max Buchanan in that order. Then I did not think any of the rest of the kids would come close to committing. Obviously, Ethan Pritchard is committed coming into the visit. But were you kind of surprised that nobody committed, Fish?
No, I think some of them already have dates set, so they probably didn't want it to get out before they pulled the trigger. I think a couple of them are up this week or the next week after that. So.
Yeah. What about you, Nick? Are you surprised no commitments coming out of that week?
I'm a little bit surprised that Redmond didn't pull the trigger. I feel like he's been leaning to Florida State for a while now, but that's not to say that Florida State didn't leave with any commitments this past weekend. Maybe there's a couple of silent guys that are just waiting for their proper date and time to officially pull the trigger. But I was a little surprised, and definitely if you're a Florida State fan, you were hoping that somebody pulled the trigger because they need a little bit of momentum right now heading into the last 2 weeks of official visits.
Well, and I agree with you. Fish and I had said, several weeks ago, maybe even 2 months ago, that we felt like Max Buchanan leaving one of his unofficial visits was probably a silent commitment. Now, Max also continued to blow up as this spring went on and started planning more official visits. So I still think they're in a good spot with him. So let's kind of break it down. I'm going to ask you guys your opinion. Coming out of those official visits for these 9 guys or 8 guys, obviously one of them is committed. Now, Ethan Pritchett is taking an official visit to UCF this weekend, so but he said he's locked in. But let's just did they strengthen their position with Max Buchanan coming out of this weekend based on what? Max didn't really say a lot. He's the only guy that didn't do a post-visit interview with on Sunday, but obviously you've seen quotes from what he said after his visit. He's talked to several people. And listen, we thought Max was going to be with us today. He may come on at some point. He does have a busy day getting ready to go to Miami for his official visit. But where do you guys think stand with Max right now? Fish, I'll start with you.
I think they're pretty much the same spot they were going into this weekend or these visits. They've been leading for him for a while now. He likes Florida State. They like him. I think he's one of the few interior linemen they're recruiting, and they've put an emphasis on him. I just think that it's only a matter of time. Sometimes these things just happen randomly. He could commit in the next 24 hours. It's just one of those things. Once he's done with this Miami visit, he'll probably shut it down and pick the Florida State Seminoles.
So you don't think he's going to end up at Penn State on the 21st?
It's always possible, but I think he's going to, there's a good possibility that he also picks a school in the next week or so and shuts it down.
Yeah, I was surprised that he actually scheduled the Penn State visit for his last visit. That one,
it's a weird one.
Yeah, I thought so too. But doesn't listen? I think sometimes we read too much into the date of the visit, right? We always think, well, they're the leader because they're getting the last visit, and that's you do see a lot of that, and it also obviously gives the program the last swing, and sometimes that is important. But I was kind of surprised. Like, I don't think he's going out of the state. Myself, I think it's a 3-team battle between Miami, Florida State, and UCF, and obviously, I think Florida State leads. I think he had a great visit. Looked like he had a lot of fun when we saw him on Sunday morning. He was enjoying it. We saw the photo shoot. Now, all the kids have fun at the photo shoots and at every school. But anyway, I think they're in a good spot there. The next guy, the guy I thought would commit was Max Redmond, because out of the offers, the 3 official visits he's taken this summer, Florida State's by far his best offer. There's nothing wrong with Illinois, and I love the University of South Florida. Worked there in the football program for 7 seasons, and but those are his 3 official visits. You and I talked a little bit about this, Fish. Is this still a Florida State thing, or do you think Max is just kind of playing out the string and has a time when he wants to announce? Because we do get into some things where the board can be crowded at certain positions, and sometimes the kid holds the leverage, sometimes the school holds the leverage. What do you think is going on with Max?
I think it's just a patience thing. I know as a fan base and everybody wants these kids to pull the trigger right away. It usually happens all of a sudden one commits. You'll see a rash of commitments all of a sudden, 2 or 3 guys, 4 guys, and I think it'll settle people down. I think the guy's just taking his time. FSU was his first offer. Florida State's recruited him since last FAU mega camp last year. They put an emphasis on him. They like him. I have him rated ahead of other guys like Stubbs and Fitzgerald that are everybody wants. I think this is the best safety in the state personally, with the most upside. Big, long, athletic kid. I think Florida State sees the same thing. He's a very underrated player.
Yeah, I agree with you. Listen, Nick, I think you talked with Zion after his visit, right?
Yeah, but he didn't really say all that much to anybody overall. So but I did have that conversation with him. Yes.
So where do you guys think Florida State is with Zion Grady right now? I know, Fish, you like their chances. For a while there, he looked like Miami caught fire with him for a couple of weeks. Now he seems kind of zeroed back. He's obviously taking other visits, but it seems like Florida State's back in the P1 position with him. How are y'all reading Zion right now?
I mean,
go ahead, Fish.
You're first off, we're talking about a kid from Alabama, so anything's possible with these guys. Florida State's recruited these guys in the past, and they've done well, and then all of a sudden, at the end, they decide to go somewhere else. I think they stand in a good spot because Alabama's not really recruiting him. I haven't seen him show a ton of love to Auburn, which is a good thing. Usually it's one or the other, but if Alabama's not showing interest, and then you have Auburn, he's not really, doesn't seem like there's a connection there. I think Florida State has a shot. Miami's got a ton of guys that they've recruited the last 2 years at D end. He probably sees a better shot at getting on the field earlier at Florida State because of that.
Yeah,
and I think the wild card in his, he scheduled that official visit to Ohio State late. I think that's kind of the wild card in this whole thing. But yeah, I kind of tend to agree with you. I think they're FSU seems to be the leader. Of course, he's coming out of an official visit, and how many times do we hear these guys say the last school set the bar, right? The last school that they visited, that's the bar has been reset. Then they go to the next school, and the visit goes well, and everything kind of takes the recency bias type of thing. Listen, a guy that they've really stepped it up with, he wasn't even scheduled to be on an official visit up until 2 weeks ago, and that's Bryce Fitzgerald. What's your take on him, Fish? And where I think he came out there and said Florida State's in his top 3, if my memory serves correct.
Yeah, that's crazy because Florida State's not had a real good history of recruiting Columbus High School. You have to go back to Jesus when he played there, JoJo. And I mean, that was the last time they've had a kid. They had a kid.
Jesus, or
I thought you were going back to biblical times.
13 AD.
No, they had a wide receiver named.
All right. I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah, from Columbus. But they just don't do well at that school. I was surprised he even took a visit, but it shows you that Florida State's put an emphasis on guys. They're very good at getting these DBs interested in them. So the fact that Florida State is in on him, I mean, he's one of the top safeties, a very good kid, comes from a good family. I think he's the type of fit that Florida State's looking from when they talk about character and culture and the whole 9 yards. He fits all the traits of what they're looking for, and I think they're in it with him. It seems like I've always said, if these guys are leaning one way and they don't pull the trigger right away on a Miami or one of the other schools, I think that the longer these go, it's better for a school like Florida State.
Yeah, and listen, I don't mean this in a critical way, because what we are reminded of at least once or twice a week is that these are teenage young men who can be swayed by what happens in one phone call, one visit. Listen, that's just the nature of the beast. But he came out and said that FSU was in his top 3 after the visit by LSU, joined by LSU in Florida. But if you go back and research it, 10 days before that, Florida State wasn't even on the radar, no official visit. So it's funny how these things change. He's got his Miami OV set up, but right now they're not in his top 3s. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out. But listen, they got themselves in the game with Fitzgerald, so we'll see how it pans out. And listen, they've got a lot of good looking prospects in the secondary for this class. I mean, we'll see how it ultimately shakes out. But yeah, they really made up some ground with him fairly quickly. Listen, Tony Williams, another safety prospect, DB prospect, was in town. He said after his visit that Florida State is certainly the biggest threat to flip his commitment from UCF. He's got some other teams involved, but what are you guys thinking about Williams? Do you think? Well, I don't want us to future cast it, but what do you got? How are you guys reading what he said coming out of that visit?
You're good, Nick. Jump in.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. His recruitment has been an interesting one. Florida State was on him in the fall of last year. They kind of backed off on him a little bit, and they committed to UCF, and now Florida State's back in the running. I mean, I don't doubt what he said whatsoever. I do think that Florida State is the biggest threat to flip him from his commitment. They certainly seem to like him. He certainly fits the type of defensive back that Surtain likes. So I would say that judging, and of course we're judging the words of teenagers here, but I would say that what he said was pretty genuine, and I do have reason to believe that Florida State is a threat here to flip him going forward. Fish.
Yeah, I just think it comes down to numbers. I still think they're going to leave a spot open for Drake Stubbs, who committed to USC. So there's always that possibility. They got a shot at Bryce Fitzgerald. You got Max Redmond. You got Gregory. There's a lot of these guys. They're very similar type players. They're all long. They could kind of versatile. They can play multiple positions. Florida State, what they're doing on the back end of their defense and recruiting DBs. I don't like to recruit a specific player for one position. They usually don't work out unless they're really good at that one position, especially in the secondary. You want these guys that can play nickel corner, or they can move around, and they're versatile. And that's what Florida State likes to recruit. All these guys have those same kind of traits: big, long, athletic. They're not taking a 5'9" corner now and saying, all right, if he doesn't work at a corner, you're going to have to process him out. So these guys are kind of all similar. I think Tony is probably in that second tier of guys that they could probably get if they really want him. But there's some bigger names above him on the board.
Yep. Yeah. And listen, it is mostly a 2-team race, but he did say that Michigan, Penn State, and Louisville have been making a late push for him. He did tell us that he does plan to take an official visit to Penn State. So it's right now, based on where he's going, it's a 3-team race. And I agree with you. I think it's a numbers game. I think they've got their priority now. I think they may be saving a place for Drake Stubbs, but I don't know how they're going to get into it at this point. He has not been on campus in forever. He had scheduled an official visit at one point. Unless he changes that, it ends up coming back on June 21st. Obviously, they've got till December to get this thing worked out. We even Williams says that he's going to wait, that he will not make a final decision until December 4th, which is, I guess, in essence, true for everybody because it's not.
I don't think they're going to get Stubbs, but we've been in this enough to know that, these type of kids, things change. I mean, a family member gets sick, or all of a sudden he gets into the season, and just like I said with Zaire Addison, it's the same thing. As you get closer and closer to signing day, realize those parents are like, all right, are we moving out there with him? Because they're not going to get to see him play that much. Even though that some of these teams are going to the Big Ten, it's still very difficult to get to some of these locations.
No, and that's kind of what I like the most about what they did official visit wise this past weekend, because Florida State has been probably the leader for Gregory Thomas for some time. And with that closing into being a Florida State Clemson battle, Florida State brought in a bunch of defensive backs that on official visits this past weekend that could, if things change there, and I'm not saying that they will, they have established themselves in the recruitment of a lot more of those types of defensive back prospects. So I feel good having seen those guys get on campus and having seen them have positive official visits. I feel like that was a real positive to come out of that this past weekend.
I think you'll agree with this. I think Gregory's more of a safety anyway, even though they're projecting him as a corner. So then all of a sudden you got Gregory, you got Max Redmond, you got Bryce Fitzgerald. These guys are all, like I said, if you put them side by side, they all look kind of similar. So they're versatile enough to play multiple positions. None of them are in that 5-star mold that you're really like, all right, you could take any of these guys and basically you're not missing out if one of them does. If Gregory did decide to go to Clemson, he's a very good player, but it's not a loss. They're doing a very good job of, throwing a big net and having a lot of options, that there's not a big gap between these guys. There really isn't. You're talking maybe one guy, if you scored him an 80, the other guy's a 78. There's not that big of a gap between the 2 or 3 players.
All right, Fish. Well, then your thoughts on Ousmane Kroma. He's been on campus a couple of more times this spring. He was here for the spring showcase. For a while, we felt like Kroma may have been trending more towards Georgia. It still might be that case, but he did seem to have a good visit this past week. And just kind of what are you hearing about where he stands between not only Florida State, but with Georgia as well?
Yeah, I mean, my feeling about this is that the more they visit, the better shot you have. I say follow, look at what they do, not what they say. He continues to pop up on campus. You got to like Florida State's chances. He's become a priority. You can see that they've kind of, him and Lewis are the 2 main guys, and they bring those guys in. You got an A+, recruiting room as far as running backs. And I think that these guys are starting to see that. Look at what Florida State's done. I've discussed this before. They've had 2 walk-ons that were productive at Florida State. The running backs have all overachieved or performed higher than their talent level. Even Benson was coming off a torn ACL, I believe MCL. We didn't know what he was going to be like. He performed very well. This offense is tailor-made for running backs to have success. We saw it again in the spring game. It didn't matter if it was Toafili, if it was the Williams kid. All the guys that they brought in have been productive. They're productive in every performance that they show up. So I think guys like Kroma, they see this and they go, wow, we could be developed. And Georgia's done a great job, but I think Florida State's even jumped over them as far as developing running backs the last few years, that if they get these top type of guys, it's going to be exciting for Seminole fans.
Pat, let me ask him one more question before I give you back control of your podcast. So we feel that Florida State is the leader for Byron Lewis. And obviously Ousmane Kroma had a really good visit this past week. Is there a world, even if it's a sliver of a chance, that Florida State lands both prospects?
I think it's a very good shot that they could land both, because they're selling the idea as, listen, you're going to be productive. We're not going to wear you out. You're going to still be able to be productive to where you're the pro scouts are going to see you. You're going to be able to perform at a high level in this offense. But we're also not going to take we're not going to wear and tear you down where you're physically beat up. By the time you get to college, the NFL, that you're going to still have room to grow as a player. So I think they have a lot to sell, and I think that they're selling them that they're going to help each other out, the two running backs. We want both of you guys, because when we take one out, there's not going to be a drop off in production. You guys are going to be 1A and 1B based on what, each game. You guys are going to basically be co-starters. So I think they understand what Norvell's selling, and that's why I think they have a shot at landing both of them.
Yeah, and I think his track record of you've probably already said it, but he has a track record of playing multiple guys. We've seen him play as many as 3 guys play meaningful snaps in a ball game at running back, and with this offensive line, who knows? You could hopefully what the offensive lines will be moving forward. You might see some more 2-back stuff from Mike and his offense as the tight end room gets better as well. And moving on to tight ends, listen, Chase Lofton, the kid from Omaha, Nebraska, came out and said that Florida State did set the bar for his official visits, and there's Missouri and Nebraska and Texas A&M involved with him. Fish, I know you and I think at the end of the day there's too many flyover states involved in this one, but he was certainly high on Florida State coming out, and indicated that neither for him nor his family is distance an issue. And listen, we've seen kids that have family more and more, and we're going to see it more and more, particularly with NIL. And I'm not saying this is the case with Chase by any stretch of the imagination, but you've seen families in the old era of college football recruiting move with their kids, and now you got some money involved, and the ability, and more people are working remotely these days. So, but what do y'all think about getting Chase all the way from Nebraska to Tallahassee?
For me, I think really the key factor in this is Chris Thompson and his relationship with Lofton. If you are a parent of a kid that's going to go D1, and this is actually the second Lofton kid because his older brother plays at Kansas State, and that's how the two know each other. If you're going to send your kid away and you want that kid to be comfortable and happy, if you have that long-standing relationship with somebody like Coach Thompson, I think you have to feel better about that, to where the flyover states don't matter as much. And of course, as you alluded to, Lofton said in his post OV interview that, he recognizes that even his brother doesn't get to go home much, and he probably won't get to go home much either. So it really depends on whether for Lofton, whether Florida State is truly a home away from home, and whether his relationships with the coaching staff that existed prior to before he was being a recruit, just how strong those are.
Yeah, and I think the I think the only guy we have not covered is Ethan Pritchett, the linebacker who is committed to Florida State. He is going to on an official visit to UCF this weekend. Now, I don't think there's any reason to confirm. He said basically that he is locked in with Florida State, and I'm not anticipating anything come from the UCF visit. What do you guys think?
I think he's locked in, but how many times have we heard that kid's locked in and all of a sudden they're flipping? I take very little from what these kids say. I think they know how to play the media now. They know what to say to you guys once, hey, this guy's on a Florida State side. I'm not going to piss him off. So
Derek Cooper taught us that lesson just last week.
It's a nice reminder. Every once in a while you get a kick in the pants that,
yes.
or a reality check, I guess is the right way to say it. Anyway,
yeah, that's true. All right. So I don't think we didn't talk about Clarity. That's the one guy we have not talked about. Cornerback Ladarian Clarity, who made an 1 and 10-minute video of his official visit behind the scenes. These things are getting crazy. But anyway, I thought he was my guy. I rated number 2 as far as possibly committing last weekend. I was very surprised that he didn't. He's got UCF. He's got Mississippi State, who I think is the number 2, and he is going to take an official visit to Ole Miss. And listen, Ole Miss is recruiting at a high rate of success right now. Lane has got the train chugging along the track. I don't think that's where the kid's going to end up. I think it's Florida State. But what do you guys – did you read anything into the addition of the Ole Miss visit. He's been to Mississippi State just about as many times as he's gone to Florida State. He's got a great relationship with that new staff, and has been on that campus several times. How do you guys read the tea leaves with clarity?
You have to just be leery with these kids from Pensacola, just because Florida State hasn't had a lot of great history with these kids over there. Escambia is not really a Florida State school, but they've done a better job once Norvell got there. I've always been pushing for them to recruit more of these guys west of Tallahassee. I think they have a shot at landing them, but you never could count out the SEC schools. Those kids from that area are rarely – a lot of them want to go to SEC programs. So it's a hard sell, but I think Florida State has a good shot at landing them.
Yeah, I do too. Well, I was a little bit surprised. I thought we'd get a commitment, and you guys may be right. There may be a silent commitment back there somewhere, and Mike's just letting them play out the string, and he's always been a guy that will tell the kids, go take your visits. We want you to make the right decision, and that's probably the right way to go about it. Mike does not seem to be afraid of competition on the recruiting trail. There's no doubt about that. So that is last weekend. Of course, it was a very, very busy weekend on campus on Sunday with the official visit kids leaving, us trying to get caught up with them. And then, of course, on Sunday afternoon, the coaching staff went into its elite camp, one of two. They will be having another one in that very small window in July that appears. That I've already heard of some kids that will be coming in for that. I did not know they were going to do one in late July, but they are. But let's talk about some of the standouts at I know Fish is a guy that you've actually think is going to end up at Florida State, and that is Shamar Arnaud. From Carrollton, Georgia. He was a guy that another guy that that's come on Florida State's radar kind of late as far as being on campus and those kind of things, but he was very impressive in camp. What do we need to know about Shamar Arnaud?
Yeah, I mean, I've honestly been high on this kid for a while. I'm surprised it took them so long. I have him as one of the top handful of corners. Big, long, athletic. I mean, the traits are similar with all of these guys, that they're recruiting a lot of long and athletic guys. I know that's a Randy effect. I know that's what he really likes. If you ever talk to him, he does not like smaller DBs. He feels that it goes all the way back to his Miami days. You look at the guys that he recruited from Mike Rump to a lot of the guys, Philip Buchanan, all these guys were above 6 feet tall, long, athletic, and they're versatile. They can play multiple positions. They're not just stuck at playing corner safety. They can play either or. They're not pigeonholed to one position.
Well, he was very impressive. I don't know how much a chance you got to watch him, Nick, but he got a chance to go up against FSU 2026 wide receiver commit Darion Williams multiple times. Those were fun matchups to watch. And by the way, Darion Williams looked great in that camp at elite camp. I mean, the guy's got change of direction. He is fast. He's got great straight line speed. He can get in and out of cuts. He's got great change of direction. I don't think he's the 6 foot that he's listed as. He's a smaller guy. But listen, he was impressive as hell. What did you think of Shamar and Darion, Nick?
You're right. I didn't get to watch too much of Arnaud and Darion because I was watching the big boys do one-on-ones on the other side. But the few times that I did get to see Arnaud, I was very impressed with his physicality and his athleticism. Great change of direction, able to switch hips very easily, which is obviously something you need to be able to do at the defensive back, cornerback position. And it looks like Florida State has come on strong here as of late. They're going to get him on an official visit, I believe, on the 21st. So he's going to join that huge crop of prospects that are going to be coming in a couple of weeks. And ultimately coming out of that, I think he was excited with where things were going with the Florida State coaching staff. He talked to a bunch of them after the camp, and I would not be surprised if that things are trending positively in that direction for Florida State when it comes to Arnaud.
Yeah, he was a one-time Tennessee commit. I believe he's going to be in Auburn this upcoming weekend, and there has been talk of a potential Georgia official visit. We'll see whether that pans out or not. Obviously, if he's going to be here this weekend, he's not going to be there. And that's conflicting reports depending on who you're talking to and listening to, but we think he's confirmed with us that he's coming. So he's not going to Georgia, but Georgia could get a midweek or late July fall visit. So that was interesting. Now, Nick, I'm kind of going out of order here. You talk about watching the big guys.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that worked out. I thought we kind of switched up on each other there. I should have been watching the skill guys.
So
anyways,
and you got to watch the most intriguing prospect in the entire camp, who is not a high school kid. He's a kid named Jazari Jackson. He's, depending on who you trust, either 7 feet, 6'11", 6'10", or 6'9", but he is one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen at a football camp. He's every bit of 300 pounds. He has hit his calves are what Popeye's forearms were to the human anatomy. I mean, he's got the largest.
He's got thick ones
I've ever seen, and they're like rocks. But anyway, he's a former basketball player who was in camp. I think they're trying. He was at IMG for a while, Fish. I don't know if you know about him. Then he went to Overtime Elite as a basketball player. He is a mountain of a man. He's got great athletic ability, but I don't think he's ever played football. If he has, it's been a long time.
Yeah, if I remember correctly. Go ahead, Fish.
Yeah, I saw him. He was supposed to go to American Heritage for football. I had seen him work out a little bit. He went to, I think, either the Under Armour or Rivals camp as a freshman in high school, and then he just disappeared. I mean, like I had already given him like a big Power 5 grade at the time, because at that time he was like 6'6", 6'7" as a freshman. But he disappeared. He was one of those guys that just disappeared, and I never knew where he went. When you guys brought him up last week, I was like, all right, so this kid went and played basketball. It didn't pan out. There's so many of these guys that seem to come back to football at some point. So,
yeah, well, it's going to be interesting. I think, though, I mean, to me, the path, if I was Florida State, find out what kind of student he is. Can you get him some Bright Futures money? Then can you offset some of the costs? I don't think they go with a scholarship with him. He's just not proven enough as a football player, and you already got to be short a scholarship or 5 at some point over the next 2 years. Obviously, NIL does give you the ability to offset penalties like that, but I think he's more of a preferred walk-on guy that you see if you can bring him in. You know, it's going to take 2 or 3 years to get him going. But listen, everybody at that camp walked into the IPF, and every single eye went to that kid. I mean, I don't care if you were a coach. I don't care what recruiting service you worked for. I don't care what parent you were what parent you were the kid of the parent you were. Everybody was paying attention to that kid. It's fast. Those stories are kind of fun. We'll see where it goes. But listen, he is one of the largest human beings I've ever seen for a 20-year-old kid. All right, so let's quickly. We were already at 30 minutes, so we got a weekend preview to do. But listen, we saw some impressive running backs at this camp on Sunday. Javion Mallory, Amari Clemens. Jaden Miles is a 2027 kid. Ladarius Pryor. Fish, out of the 2026 kids, Mallory, Clemens, and Pryor, they're all great-looking prospects. But do you have a favorite? Because I'm going to tell you what, Ladarius Pryor, out of that group, his feet are unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just the one thing I like about Mallory, he has like a old man's body. It's weird. He's not like the most physically impressive kid, but he's one of these guys that no matter, I went and watched him play against Vero Beach, and he had a run where he broke out and he fumbled. He's not elite burst, but then you watch him catch the ball. He's very effective catching the ball out of the backfield. He's a complete back. I've compared him to Alex Collins, who Florida State recruited back in the day, only to lose him out to Arkansas at the time. He's a very good back. He's not going to be one of these guys that's going to blow you away at a camp. I think he's very good, but you put him in pads, you put him in a game setting where it matters most, he's a very productive back. I like the other guys. As you know, I'm a big Derek Cooper fan as well. I think Derek Cooper's the best. I think Derek Cooper's going to be the best back in the country. When all's said and done, I think he's a 5-star elite back. that everybody in the country is going to offer him.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing who his favorite team is after this weekend.
Where does he go out this weekend?
Well, he told us
Who
last
knows?
Wednesday. He told us last Wednesday that Florida State was his favorite school. Then he commits to Georgia. Now he's not committed. I'm just saying. I was trying to be facetious or funny or smart ass, which I have a tendency to be. No, it was a joke. It was just just a joke. We'll see who the number one school on his list is.
I mean, I like Clemens a lot too. He's an electric back on film. I just haven't had a chance to see him in person like you guys, so it'd be interesting to see.
Well, we do know that there were at least 4 offers that came out of this camp, including Michael Ionata, a big offensive tackle who's actually Florida State legacy. His dad and uncle both were starting offensive linemen at Florida State for Bobby Bowden back in the early and mid 80s. Javale Fredericks from Daphne, Alabama, another large human being, about 6'8". He got an offer. Cornerback named Chauncey Davis. And then, of course, the guy that Nick Carlisle has been waiting to get an offer from Florida State since he went to Miami to work the elite camp with you, Fish. Jake Krull got one. Nick, tell us what we need to know about Jake.
Well, I mean, Fish will probably agree with me on this, is that he's probably one of the better young defensive ends in the country in that 2026 class. He's got great break, great speed, great first step, some good moves coming on in pass rush. And the offer meant a lot to him. His mother was a Florida State Seminole, so the big focal point in talking to him after he got offered is that he was excited to get an offer from his mother's alma mater. He's excited for the potential chance to play for the Seminoles. And I don't know what took him so long. Of course, I am not the talent evaluator that you guys probably are, but if I can see that this kid has got some special stuff, I was happy for him to get that offer.
Yeah, and we had a couple other offers come out for the 2027 guys. A quarterback by the name of Trent Seaborn from Thompson High School in Alabaster, Alabama, got an offer, and then a 2027 inside linebacker Jake Godfrey from North Gwinnett, Georgia, Swanee, Georgia High School. This has nothing to do with Florida State, but we walked into the facility and we thought we saw there's a guy looked like a former NFL player. And I thought it was Keith Brooking from Georgia, who played at Georgia Tech, played for the Falcons, and has a son that's a recruitable kid. It turned out to be NFL Hall of Famer Steve Hutchinson, who has a son that's a tight end down there in South Florida. So it's not every day that you see a Hall of Famer at football camp, and he still looks like he could play. All right, so what we're going to do, we've got you a quick update on elite camp because it's been an hour there. We've got you updated on what happened with official visits. So what we're going to do is take a quick break here from our sponsors, Aer Lingus, Alumni Hall, and Mowry Law Firm, and we'll be right back to wrap up the show with a weekend preview of the 6 kids that are supposed to be on campus this weekend, and we'll be back in roughly a minute and a half.
At Aviva Stadium in Dublin, the home of the
Seminole fans, Alumni Hall is your ultimate FSU shopping experience and has moved to a new location off Timberlane Road in Tallahassee. Shop FSU gear from Nike, Champion, New Era, Yeti, and more. Alumni Hall has Seminole gear for the entire family, plus accessories and gifts. Spend $150 and you'll earn $10 off your next purchase with their Hall Pass rewards. Stop by their new location on Timberlane Road near REI or shop anytime online at alumnihall.com. Alumni Hall, where Seminole fans. Finding an experienced lawyer you can trust is crucial. With over 50 years of combined litigation experience, the attorneys at Mowry Law Firm are dedicated to providing our clients with exceptional legal services, focusing on car and trucking accidents, premises liability, and wrongful death. Call 904-824-7799, MowryLaw.com.
All right, we are back after a short commercial break. And listen, it was a very busy day at FSU's campus yesterday. Had about 40 schools at a 7-on-7 competition over at the rec center off near the golf course, and then had about 400 offensive and defensive linemen on campus at the indoor practice facility. Nick, I know you, because you're the younger of the guys that cover recruiting for us, you drew the short straw and had to go sit out in the hot oven-like temperatures of Tallahassee, while I did a little bit more of a slow cooker in the IPF, but it was a hot
It's air
day.
conditioned. You can't even say it's a slow cooker.
There is no air conditioning in that place.
There's a little bit of air conditioning.
There's doors open, and it's 575 people in there, all sweating. But anyway, I did get the easier of the two assignments. There's no doubt about that. But you also got the juicier gossip coming out of the day, because you have updates on 2025 linebacker Tarvos Alford, TJ Alford, and you've got an update on Ben Hanks. Tell us what we need to know.
Yeah, with Alford, I'll just speed run through here because I know we want to talk about the upcoming weekend. The big news on Alford is that he was going to take an official visit last week, and I believe that official visit has been rescheduled to September 14th. That is the day that the Seminoles host Memphis. I believe that's week 3, week 4, something like that.
Week 3,
something along those lines. Look, with Alford and Fish said something either earlier this morning or yesterday that he felt that Florida State still had a shot with Alford, even though he's been committed to Ohio State for a couple of months now. I get that impression as well. I asked him, because some kids take visits just to take visits. Some kids take visits to actually evaluate their options. I got the sense that it was more the latter rather than the former with Alford. It seems like even though he's content with his commitment to Ohio State right now, that he is truly still exploring some options with these visits. So if that official visit in the fall does continue as planned, that'll be good for Florida State. With Ben Hanks, he's going to be officially visiting on the 18th. It's going to be a midweek official visit from him. Did not get the sense that he was as thrilled about that. Of course, Ben Hanks hasn't been to Florida State as much as somebody like a Tarvos Alford has. A lot of this official visit is going to be seeing how he likes the coaching staff, how he likes the city when he gets up here. So Hanks is going to be here next week on the 18th, but by far the bigger of the two stories to come out of the 7-on-7 was Alford and, where he stands with Florida State in his recruiting, because he's definitely a guy that Florida State could use at the linebacker position.
Yeah, I'm just glad they're getting a chance to get him on campus, because he, like I said, his initial official visit got postponed or canceled. Didn't look like it was going to come to fruition. And of course, now they've, because of whatever happened over the last several weeks, he is now, and being on campus yesterday, he is now going to obviously hopefully be here for the Memphis game. Now the guy another one that got away, and this was disappointing. It's the one reason I did want to go to 7-on-7 yesterday. I wanted to see Todd Robinson, the kid from Valdosta, who just committed to Georgia. He told you he is shutting down his recruitment. He will not visit Florida State or really anybody else moving forward. So that was probably the one kid I was hoping that they might change the mind of as far as getting on campus. And of course, you saw something, Nick, I've been around football a long time, and I've read about these things. I've heard about these things, but I've never seen it in person. You watched a 13 or 14-year-old kid get offered a football scholarship by Mike Norvell. Wonderful Mounds the fourth, I believe, if I'm reading Roman numerals correctly. Yep. I don't play for Live Golf, so I struggle with Roman numerals. But what do we need to know about Wonderful Mounds? Because he sounds like a terrific prospect.
Yeah, you might. I think his nickname is Champ. So honestly, that might be easier for all of us to just call him Champ. Look, this kid, we were the first match of the day. We were watching Vero Beach with a good slew of Florida State coaches. Norvell was standing next to us. Tokars was there. So we were watching a little bit of Ephraim White. Obviously, he's a 2026 commit athlete, plays quarterback, wide receiver, cornerback. First drive of the game, Ephraim's at the helm. And then this kid who's 6'2", I think he's 6'2", 200-something pounds, and he leads a touchdown drive immediately. And I look over to Tokars and Norvell, and you just saw their faces light up. And he got that offer immediately after. So we went over and talked to Champ afterwards. He had just received his first Power 4 offer from UCF the weekend before at a camp. I had a hard time believing, Pat, that this kid was 14 because you're a tall guy, I'm a tall guy. We're pretty built big men. This kid towered over me even a little bit. So he already looks the part. He just turned 14 from what I understand. And to see the level of anticipation and his arm strength at such a young age, this kid is going to be special a couple of years down the line.
Yeah. You don't see these things happen often, but obviously, everybody that saw him out there the other day, including you, Mike, and Tony, obviously came back raving about the kid. So we'll see what happens. Long way to go. He's going to get a lot of offers now.
God, yeah. It's when you hear even the year 2028, it just seems like an eternity away. But I'm excited to see. I'm sure that he'll be a factor in whatever Vero Beach decides to do this season. So I'm interested to see him in game time.
I want to see who wins the argument over who gets to be called champ, because he's got a teammate called Champ Smith, and that Champ's a little bit bigger than Wonderful. So I have a feeling that Champ Smith's going to take away that nickname. All right, so listen, we got a couple updates from the big man camp. You had a USF commit, Brooks Williams, worked out for Florida State. He did not leave with the offer. I think he's a guy that Florida State's going to keep their eye on. The kid that I loved, he's committed to Ole Miss. He's a shorter guy. He's listed at 6'3", 240. I don't think he's a fraction of an inch taller than I am. I'm 6'2". But Talib Graham from Daphne, Alabama, boy, his get-off was exceptional. All right, so if you're an older guy like me or Fish, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a defensive end that Syracuse ended up being drafted by the Colts named Dwight Freeney. If I had to do a player comp on what Dwight Freeney looked like coming out of high school, Talib Graham has one of the best get-offs I've seen. He's short. He's not long. He's committed to Ole Miss, but that's a guy that if I'm a Florida State fan, I'm just kind of keep an eye on as this recruiting cycle continues to move forward. Anything could happen. Then probably my favorite player at Fish, obviously for the business that you have, I would I know he's not a Florida kid, but you got some college coaches. I would put on Cole Webster from Cuthbertson High School in Waxhaw, North Carolina, 6'3", 270. Again, I don't want to get everybody in an uproar. He was one of my favorite players in the entire camp, along with Talib. His best offers are James Madison, Old Dominion, and Northern Illinois. He's got every Ivy League school. He's a smart kid, obviously. This kid is a smaller version of Braden Fisk. I would imagine that this is kind of what Braden Fisk looked like coming out of high school. High motor, great leverage, physical, violent hands, strong. I got a call as soon as I started posting video of him at camp. I started getting calls from college coaches I know at other schools. I've got one that's reaching out to him today. Mike and Odell certainly noticed him. At the end of the day, I'm going to have to go back and break down his film from his junior year. But I do know that, I don't know if you listen to Mike Farrell, in my research on Cole Webster, this is the kid's name. I don't think I've said that. But Cole Webster was he's going to end up being a guy that blooms late. But he was certainly a fascinating story at that camp. We also saw an offer go out to 2026 offensive lineman Emmanuel Tucker. He's offensive lineman, defensive lineman, but he worked out for the offensive line for Florida State. He was impressive in the camp. So, and then we had at least one offer. Fish, you may know a little bit about this kid. 2026 defensive back Jordan Crutchfield got an offer from Florida State. What do we need to know about him?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I went up to watch Fort Pierce Westwood practice, and he was a very impressive looking corner. Another guy ran really well, got super long arms. I mean, his arms are super long. He's very aggressive. I thought he was one of the better young corners I saw. He played in a spring jamboree. They had him playing wide receiver. His ball skills are ridiculous. He outjumped he was playing receiver. He outjumped a corner with ease and snatched the ball there, got his feet down. I think they called offensive pass interference, which was ridiculous. He just made a great play. But I think he's got a chance to be really good, one of the top corners in the younger classes.
Yeah, well, and now, so see if we can get our listeners and viewers out of here in under an hour. We got about 8 minutes. Let's talk quickly about the 6 kids. There could be 7. Right now, as you see the names listed on our screen, wide receiver Malik Clark, wide receiver Khalid Lockett, wide receiver Josh Moore, defensive tackle Justice Terry, who is committed to USC, linebackers Zadarius Rainey-Sell, and safety Jordan Young are going to be expected to be on campus starting tomorrow. We're less sure about Iverson Howard, the running back from Maryland. He had told us the last time we spoke with him that he was going to be on campus this weekend. I have reached out to him. I have not heard back. That generally means that he is not coming. So I do not expect to see him, but he is in our preview. But quickly, Fish, out of these kids, who do you – I mean, I know that you're a big fan of Josh Moore. You said in Fish Bits you think that he and Vernell Brown are most likely to be the 2 receivers that Florida State signs out of that class. Give us a little background on that.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Moore, FSU's been recruiting all spring. They sent Dugans down to a spring game or spring scrimmage. He fits what they like, big physical receiver. If I was going to make a comp, he reminds me of Willie Halstead when Willie played at Florida State. He does a lot of things really well. He's not going to blow you away with his top-end speed, but he is able to get separation. He is able to get open, and he's got a great big catch radius. He has huge hands. He may have the biggest hands of any receiver I've seen this year. They don't even make gloves big enough for his hands. So he's someone that I like a lot, and I think they have a great shot at.
All right. Nick, Khalid Lockett's a guy that you've kept in contact with over the course of his recruitment by Florida State. This will be his second visit. He was here in February for an unofficial visit. Alabama has now entered the picture. He will visit them after Florida State and before Texas. But, in what he's told us and in reading what he's told other people, this certainly seems to be FSU and then the 2 in-state programs, Texas and Texas A&M.
Yeah, that's about right. Look, he has not made it back since that unofficial visit, which, he's a Texas kid. So, I mean, it's far, but it's not too far away. And especially when you have all those Texas schools vying after you, I wasn't expecting him to make another visit, but to have him returning for his official visit and have that be the first visit that he's taking since that unofficial, he claims that visit had a lasting impression on him. My reaction is well, we'll see. I'm not terribly. Is he a great prospect? Absolutely. Am I terribly confident that Florida State is going to improve their placing with him when he comes here this weekend? I'm not overly optimistic, but it's good to get him back on campus. And it seems like, Florida State is there. I don't want to make it seem like Florida State doesn't have a chance, because I absolutely believe they do. But he's a star wide receiver in the state of Texas. I would say that Florida State is in the 3rd position heading into this weekend.
Yeah, and listen, I think that the one thing that we probably need to start out all these conversations with is, I've always been of the opinion, I think Fish is too, anytime you get a kid on campus, even if you're not the favorite heading into that weekend, getting the kid on campus does give you a shot. Now, maybe it is a puncher's chance where you've got to hit the right spot at the right time, or you don't have a shot, but they do have a chance, I think. And listen, he's been on high on them, and listen, if you're getting that kid to consider you, why he can just get in his car and be at Austin and an hour, and College Station in 2 hours, or whatever the distance is. That says a lot. Now, another guy we don't know a lot about, quite honestly, is Malik Clark. He was not offered by Florida State until late May. He is a 4-star wide receiver, ranked as the 49th best receiver in the country. For this class, he's already been to South Carolina and North Carolina on official visits. He will visit NC State after Florida State. Fish, just based on what you put on Fish Bits, I got to think that you hate to say a 4-star guy's a down-the-line guy, but Florida State is recruiting at a high level at receiver right now with Josh Moore and Trey Brown being guys that you have projected right now, at least coming in this week's Fish Bits, to end up at Florida State. You think he's just simple question on Malik, since we don't know a lot about him. You think he's a down-the-line guy on their board?
Yeah, definitely. They're in a position of great strength. I've always said this is a good position to be in, where you're recruiting your top-end guys. You have guys in that second-tier group, but Josh Moore, Vanell Brown, there's some other guys they have that they could probably get in on. They're in a very good spot for. So I think that kid's probably down the road. They'd have to lose one of these other two guys, maybe even both of them, to get on him.
Yeah. I've spoken to the kid very briefly. What he does have is blinding speed. I mean, he told me that he's run like a 4.35, and now I have no idea whether that's laser guided or a position coach with a stopwatch, but he's got a lot of speed out of the slot. He's 6'3", so physically you like what he brings to the table, but he's considering who Florida State is in on, and the guy that we just finished talking about, in addition to some other guys, he's definitely a down the road type recruit for them.
Yeah. Now, talking about shooting your shot, as far as we know, USC commit and everything defensive tackle Justice Terry is supposed to be on campus tomorrow. He had been committed to Georgia for over a year before flipping to Southern Cal in late March. He has already taken his official visit to Georgia and will be at USC on the 21st. Florida State gets a chance to make some waves for them this weekend. Fish, what are the chances?
I missed that for a second.
Justice Terry.
Yeah. Maybe I should have just said I missed that. Maybe I was right on saying I missed it. I don't think their odds are very good.
So. This is a social call. Yeah. This is a social call to me.
Yeah.
This would be the puncher.
He has a girlfriend in town that he probably is trying to hook up with or something.
All right, well, let's move on from Justice Terry. Let's go to Zadarius Rainey Sell from Bethel School in Spanaway, Washington. We got to see him last summer when he was offered by Florida State after he and a bunch of his teammates came through town for a little workout date. In my research today, leading up to this podcast, I know he spoke with someone at Rivals earlier in the week, and they're reading that UCLA is the leader here. He's already taken an official visit with the Bruins, Oregon State, and Washington. We'll visit Oklahoma after his trip to Tallahassee. Alabama, Oregon, and Miami are also in the mix, but he hasn't set official visit dates with any of those schools. Fish, I know this is a kid that you've tracked for a while. What do you think about their chances here?
I missed that one too. Sorry about that. That Rainey kid?
Yes.
Yeah, they've been recruiting him hard for a while. Rainey coming out from the West Coast. I think he committed.
He did to Washington.
No, did he commit to Florida State though? I thought he had committed to Florida State way back.
He committed to Washington right before DeBoer took the Alabama job. Yeah, and they decommitted.
I mean, if he gets back on campus again, you got to like their chances. I mean, this is a distance for him to come. Florida State has a major need a linebacker. I didn't put him in the class, in that so-called predicted class, just because of where he's from and how far he's coming. But you got to like the fact that they're getting back on campus. I like his film. I think he's a very good linebacker. They need linebackers, and he's one of the few that's really interested in them.
Yeah, and then the last kid we want to talk about is safety Jordan Young, 4-star prospect out of Monroe, North Carolina. He's been to Clemson a ton of times unofficially, took his official visit there this past weekend. Just like every kid we read about after official visit, whether it's here or somewhere else, he had a great visit. Clemson does do obviously one of the better programs in the United States, even though they're going through, I guess if winning 9 games is a rut. They're in a rut right now, but he was there this weekend. They are the presumed leader. he's got FSU this weekend. Then we'll head to NC State. Then he's supposed to end up in Michigan over the weekend, next weekend. Doesn't plan on making a final decision until mid-October. What do you guys think about Florida State's chances of maybe getting them moving up in front of Clemson for Jordan?
I'm not overly optimistic about this one either. Obviously, it's great to get him on campus. If he's pushing back his actual commitment into October, to me that helps Florida State's chances. You get him on an unofficial visit here. Maybe you bring him down for a game before he commits in October to get another impression on him before he makes his final decision. But I think Clemson is pretty comfortably in the lead with Young right now. Florida, like I said earlier about getting more, safety prospects, defensive back prospects coming in this past weekend, they've really helped themselves in casting a wide net there. And I'm not sure how Jordan Young fits into that, but it's good to get him back on campus as always.
Well, guys, we have given people a lot of information to digest. And listen, if you are not an Osceola subscriber, please go to floridastate.rivals.com or theosceola.com. It'll get you to the same place. We've got Fish's Fish Bits for June 12th up on the boards. You do have to be a subscriber to get to those. He's got a lot of great nuggets. Nick and I have our camp notes, the full version, the camp notes from 707 and Big Man Camps yesterday. Nick has got his article on Tarvos Alford and Ben Hanks Jr. We've also got our 8 articles from this past weekend's official visits, so you can read exactly what the kids had to say coming out of those visits. And then, of course, Kurt Weiler, last of all, Kurt Weiler is out in Omaha, getting ready to watch Florida State tip off against Tennessee on 7 o'clock on, I don't guess you tip off, first pitch at 7 p.m. On ESPN out in Omaha on Friday. He will have coverage out there as long as Florida State is out there. And if you're listening from Tallahassee, I believe Jerry, Nick, and Bob are throwing a little shindig at Glory Days tomorrow night. And they will welcome all Osceola subscribers, all FSU fans, come out to Glory Days on Capitol Circle Northeast at Tallahassee and watch the Seminoles go up against the Volunteers. Then, probably the most anticipated news of the weekend. Fish is coming to Tallahassee for Sunday's camp. Yeah. So we will get a Fish sighting on Sunday as FSU will have its last individual camp.
What time does that camp start at?
That's a great question. 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock, because the only reason I know this is because the registration starts at 11, and obviously the guys will be leaving on official visits. But yes, 1 o'clock is what time. Registration 11, camp starts at 1, runs through 3 if they stay on schedule. We'll obviously have post-official visit coverage on Sunday on the board, video of the kids leaving. And then Monday we'll have coverage of the quarterback camp and to a lesser extent the specialist camp. We might find the greatest long snapper in the world, so we may report on that. We'll see. But a lot of stuff going on with Florida State football, Florida State baseball. So, guys, as always, appreciate the hard work and expertise. And we hope that if you're a Osceola subscriber, that you enjoy these podcasts, videocasts, however you want to call them. And if you're not a subscriber to the YouTube channel, please go to the Osceola YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button while you're watching us, hit the notification button so you get notifications of when we are going to do both live and taped shows. But please check all our content out at floridastate.rivals.com or theosceola.com. And we will be back next week with another edition of Reeling Them In. Nick, Fish, have a great weekend, guys.
Take it easy.
Thank you.